Welcome back, men. This is the Men on Purpose podcast. Zach Dean here with special guest Jean Laguerre. Thank you so much for jumping on here, brother.
Well, thank you for having me, Zach. It's an honor to be part of the show and to be able to put my message out there.
When I connected with you a few weeks ago, which is just incredible how we can connect with people everywhere now on social media, I was immediately blown away at your story around health, wellness, family, faith, and business. And so I was like, you are a top candidate for this podcast, and I'm so excited to introduce you to everyone. So for those who don't know Gene, I'll give you a quick little overview. He's actually a 23-time drug-free bodybuilding champion. He works with over 50s, specifically CEOs who are suffering from chronic health diseases, and he's the author of the book The Art of the REP. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that. We're going to talk about all things health and wellness, talking about the heart crisis, why people are having so many heart attacks these days. We're going to talk about how to grow muscle without steroids. And we're also going to talk about the importance of faith that helps your purpose and keeps you walking the straight and narrow in this crazy, crazy world. So for those who want to check out Gene, I'll put the links around here for his websites and socials. And we're also going to be talking about mobility, fitness, cardiovascular health, and flexibility. So I'm pumped to get into this. Let's just start off with your story, Gene. Like, how did you become a 23-time drug-free bodybuilding champion? This is amazing.
Well, being 60 years old, Zach, this at the time when I started, you're going back to 1979, which seemed like that was like caveman years. Most kids my age, we didn't have anything to do but to be physically active. Most of my friends were all athletes. Whether it was track, martial arts, boxing, basketball, football, everybody was in their own athletic endeavors. In high school, I was on the handball team, football team, wrestling team. And as soon as I got in the weight room and I started touching the weights, I just fell in love with it. At 16 years old, at 6'1", I weighed 185 pounds, and in 3 months, I could squat 400 pounds for 20 reps. I was benching 225 for 5, 6 reps, and my body just started changing. And I was like, wow, I was just so fascinated with the process. Going back as a young kid, like, 6, 7, 8 years old, I was into comic books, and I loved Superman and Hulk and, Avengers and X-Men and, all of these, heroes, Spider-Man, you name it, just to me, superheroes represented good. They protected people that were weak, and they all had these amazing physiques, because they had to be in shape, they had to be strong, and they had all these, inhuman like powers, so for me as a kid, that image was very influential. So once I started lifting and all of a sudden I started getting stronger and my body started changing, I was like, wow. I said, this is how it happens, like obviously my body felt like it was meant for it. So a friend of mine gave me a magazine and found out that they had bodybuilding competitions for teenagers. And I just thought to myself, I said, well, I'm 16 years old. If I train for a year, I said, I'll be 17. I said, the oldest teenager is only going to be 2 years older than me. So in my mind, I'm like, so how much better than me can he be? I said, I'm sure I could do all right, and I worked really hard, trained 6 days a week, 4.5 hours a day. And everybody said, how do you think you're going to do? I said, first or second. Meanwhile, I didn't have a coach. I wasn't training at a gym. I basically cleaned out my garage. I had a basic barbell and dumbbell set, and my physique was built from benching and squatting and deadlifting, all basic movements, pull-ups, dips, push-ups, jump rope, all the basics. And I went out there and shocked everybody, and I took second place. 11 months, I lost to a 19-year-old, and that basically that lit the fuse. I got excited because I put in a lot of work, and the outcome that I wanted, I achieved, which was to not place lower than second. And then my senior year of high school, 6 months later, I take first place. And I won another show that year, and I entered the men's at 18 years old. I placed third in 2 men's competitions. Year number 3, I won 8 shows. I'm in 5 magazines. The whole thing just kept snowballing. In 4 years, I won 13 championships. In 9 years, I won 18. It just kept coming. So I knew that if I stayed with it, that I could achieve my desired goal, except for the fact that at 22 years old, I had no idea such a thing as steroids existed. I didn't know bodybuilders took drugs to build their bodies. I thought everybody trained the way I did, just followed a good diet and worked hard and built the best physique that they could. And when I found out this substance existed, it was a shock. I mean, first national competition, I come in just barely over 200 pounds. And the second smallest guy outweighed me by 20 pounds. The biggest guy outweighed me by 40 pounds. And I'm saying, why are these guys so much bigger than me? It's like, I don't get it. And this person overheard me, and he said, they're juicing, man. I said, juicing. I'm like, what's that? He said, steroids. They're taking drugs. So I was like, oh no, I didn't know this existed. And so it was a hard reality, but I still felt that with all the success that I had, and I was only training, 6 years, I said, you know what? I said, if I keep going, I believe I can keep winning, and my physique will only get better. So I just stuck it out.
Wow. What was that moment like where you heard about the juicing, the steroid taking? Did that just crumble your dream? Did that add to the pressure? Like, how did you handle that reality check, so to speak?
Well, it was definitely some pressure that came with that, especially seeing, what the competition looked like when they were taking these steroids. I mean, these guys were just incredibly big. They came in really, really defined, and I knew that I couldn't match that size. I couldn't compete with it, So fortunately for me, when I got into the sport, a bodybuilder by the name of Frank Zane was going for his third world championship. And Zane happened to be a bodybuilder that was under 200 pounds and was beating giants. And I said to myself, if Zane could be not the biggest and be the best, then I said, I just have to keep working on building the best physique that I can and have as few weaknesses as possible. And I should be able to take down the giants. And that was my goal. So everything in life, timing is a factor. Had I not known someone like Frank Zane existed who was doing the unthinkable, being small frame and taking down giants, it would have made it hard for me to believe that it was really possible. So anytime someone is doing something that you aspire to do and they're doing it with success right away, you're like, hey, if they're doing it, why can't I do it too? I just got to keep putting in the work.
Mm. That's a key element of success that I've noticed in any area. It's about having role models. Did he become your coach or mentor? Did you have any mentors around you
Oh,
that
no, not at all.
okay.
Not at all. These guys were in California. I was in New York. There was no internet at the time, no social media, no Zoom. So, what I did do was, every month when bodybuilding magazines came out, I would buy the current magazine, and whatever articles that, Zane would write and discuss, I would just read every bit of information I could and just soak it up. and just use it as inspiration, fuel to the fire.
So we're talking about growing muscle without steroids. I've always joked to my friends, it's like if I actually did steroids, I would, I think my body would probably double in size. Like I have one of those types of bodies. I put on muscle quite fast, but I find it hard to drop the fat as well. Whereas my little brother, Liam, he is a bit more taller, a bit more lanky than I am. So he's really lean, but finds it a little bit harder to put on the muscle. So when it comes to putting on muscle naturally and not doing steroids, what are your keys to putting on muscle? Because there's a lot of people out there who um, might be wanting to lose fat or increase their stamina, or maybe they're even not even in the gym right now. But for those of us who are in the gym and we want to start putting the muscle on, what are the keys to do that naturally?
Well, that's a great question, Zach. And the formula, to a certain extent, it's simple. Most people, when they train, they don't do their exercises properly. They have poor form. They don't have proper range of motion. They don't train with enough intensity, and they don't work on getting stronger. When you break down, building muscle, they call it progressive resistance training, meaning that the load that you place on the muscle, as the muscle begins to adapt and grow and develop greater strength and capacity, you have to figure out ways on increasing the load on the muscle so that the muscle can continue going through the cycle of growth continuously. So, but if you do your exercises poorly and you don't go through a proper range of motion, you don't train with enough intensity, you're not trying to get stronger, it's just not going to happen. And then there is such a thing as overtraining. And if you don't follow a good diet, you don't get enough protein in your diet, you overtrain, you don't allow your muscles to recover, what happens is the opposite. Now, the muscles become more susceptible to injury. And, any athlete will tell you that's our nightmare, is getting hurt. Because once we are injured, we're sidelined, and now we can't really train. All you're thinking about is trying to get better. But when someone wants to build muscle, you just have to follow the basic principles, take notes. Let's say a guy weighs 200 pounds. If you're only able to bench 185 pounds, let's say you're benching it for like 6 or 8 reps, that's not going to get it done. But if you get to a point where you could bench 250 to 300 pounds, and you could do anywhere from 6 to 10 reps with that weight, now you're going to have a substantial increase of muscle. The key thing is never sacrifice weight for form. Make sure you're doing the movement properly before you start feeling like, you want to be King Kong and you want to, turn into the Hulk and lift as much weight as you can load. And meanwhile, you're making a leap. It's like 1 week you can't be benching 200 pounds, and the next week you're trying to bench 400. That's a recipe for disaster. Strength comes, in cycles. It can move and then it can stall, and then it can lose a little bit of ground, and then it'll go up again, and then it'll stall, and then it can maintain. So you have to be prepared. The body is not this kind of machine where continuously it's just going to keep getting stronger and the weights are just going to get heavier and your recovery is going to be up to speed, and it's like everything's going to be perfect. It's just not going to be that way. You just have to constantly try to improve your concentration and your technique and try to judge it on your pump. Basically, when you train a muscle group really, really well, the blood swells up inside the muscle tissue, and the muscle looks much larger than usual. And if you train with that type of effort and intensity, and you get that sick-looking pump, where you look at your body like, now that's the body I want when I'm not pumped. So if you start seeing that kind of progress, then you're basically on the right track. The next is to just be consistent. Now, for someone over 50, it's different. If you're in your 20s and you have this goal to build muscle, your body, your testosterone level is at all-time high, the body's recovery is at an all-time high. But once you get older, all of that changes. Hormonal level, testosterone levels decrease, recovery changes. So now you have to just really make sure you're doing things correctly. Even though you could still improve significantly, but it's not going to make the same level that you have the potential to if you're like starting out in your late teens or early 20s. Even in your 30s, you can still probably make good progress. But once you start getting like upper 40s and 50s, you could get better, but it's just not on the same level of better.
There was a key concept you shared when we spoke the other week, which was talking about as we age, there's a difference between if we look after ourselves now versus if we start looking after ourselves later on. Can you dive into that? You gave an analogy that was really, really powerful around the roller coaster.
Right. Yes, I remember that one. Basically, what I was trying to say is that too often than not, we're not thinking of the future and how what we do today impacts the future. Let's look at a person who smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, and they started smoking like that at 17 years old. By the time 20, 30 years goes by, there's so much smoke trapped in their body, in their lungs, in their heart, in their arteries. The body's just really in a position where it's going to start suffering. Before you know it, illnesses come. But if we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm in my 20s now, but I'm going to really eat healthy and I'm going to exercise and I'm going to balance out how I train in terms of strength and flexibility and cardiovascular. I'm going to monitor how my body recovers from workouts, because in 20, 30 years, when I'm in my 40s and 50s, I want this body to still be amazingly fit. So I'm going to do the necessary things today that could allow me to have a body that's that much better tomorrow. And unfortunately, most of us just don't think that way. We think of right now. We don't think of what could happen later based on what we're doing right now. How we win. It's like when a person invests. If a 20-year-old invests in a stock and lets it sit for 30 years, all of a sudden, if it was a $5,000 investment, it could be 5 million in 30 years. Who knows, depending on, how strong that stock is. But if a person is 60 years old, you don't have 30 years, for that stock to grow. You need a stock that's a little bit more aggressive, where in 5 or 10, it could kind of potentially give you some nice numbers. But it's the same concept. When we are exercising and eating healthy, don't just do it for now, do it for the later that is to come. God willing, of course. None of us knows exactly how much time we have on that hourglass once it's flipped over, but we do the best we can, and the rest is in God's hands. And just try to live the best life that we possibly can for as long as we can by being healthy. You don't want to be in a hospital or a wheelchair, or you're suffering and you're completely compromised because your style of living really oppressed your body and damaged it in ways that 20, 30 years later you're still paying for it.
So it's like with the roller coaster, it's similar to the roller coaster, hey? So in the beginning, if someone's willing to look after themselves, they're gonna have less of a roller coaster trip in the later ages. And if you don't look after yourself in the future and the later years, we're gonna have more of an up and down roller coaster as well, hey?
Yeah, it's going to be more down and up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be picking up quite a bit of speed. so, So, well, you know, I mean, the body as we get older is going to change. I mean, there's nothing that we can do that's going to completely offset that. But the higher the level that you achieve in terms of your fitness, the more you're going to be able to sustain that as you're aging, and your body's going to be that much healthier for it. It's like, here it is. I started bodybuilding. I was 16 years old, and now I'm 60. I can still bench press 275 for reps. You know, I can still do weighted dips with 60 pounds for 10 reps. You know, I can do 10 to 12 pull-ups, you know, or with good form, proper range of motion. There's a lot of physical ability. You know, I can average 30 to 40 push-ups, depending on which style of push-ups I'm doing, you know. So these are things that help you to kind of measure yourself. Because if a person said, oh, back when I was in high school, I used to do 50 push-ups, you know, and I'm like, well, that was like 30, 40 years ago. When's the last time you got on the ground to do a set of push-ups? And I'm like, well, I probably still could do it. You know, maybe I don't get 50, but I think I'm still good for 30. And then they find out they're not even good for 5. You know what I'm saying? So too often than not, we don't get it. You know, if you want this body to stay fit, you got to keep doing things the right way. And you can't be on this roller coaster of consistency. You got to tell yourself, this is important. I'm going to do it. And that's it. I'm not missing any workouts. As long as I train at least 4 days a week, I'm good. You know, but if I get 5 or 6, even better. But my goal is to never dip below 4 days a week of training. So one of the reasons why I picked 4 is because it's 7 days in a week. You don't want to train 3 days and it's 3 against 4. Whereas if you're training at least 4 days a week, you like that, right? If you're training at least 4 days a week, that means you got 3 days going up against 4. So 4 is always going to win. You know, so that's the advantage you're looking for. Let alone if you do 5 hours.
That's a winning mindset right there for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Now, what you're sharing is some really key fundamentals. I hope everyone's listening at home. This is the difference between the long-term game versus the short-term game. And I think that question of what you had growing up, which was, do you get on the steroids and have the short-term results and short-term wins and propel your body through massive growth in a short period of time that maybe potentially cause long-term effects and never be able to kind of come back from it? Which, I don't know, I'd like to know a bit more of your mindset around that and why didn't you actually do steroids? But then also the difference between long-term, which was going all natural, being consistent at the gym, focusing on the fundamentals, building the building with one brick at a time, talking about the poor form versus this type of range, the intensity, whether you're going in for strength, whether you're overtraining, your nutrition. I'm sure you might have some principles on how to do that. But I guess my question is, why didn't you take the steroid route? Because it would have been, you would have got to your goal quicker, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a big booster for sure. But it just wasn't worth it to me. You know, it's like, for me, you know, as the naive kid that I was when I started, you know, assuming that everybody built their bodies through discipline and hard work and sound nutrition, you know, to me, it just seemed like the right way to do it. It's like if a kid sits in class with you and you taking a test and he gets 100 and he tells you he cheated. Meanwhile, you know, you got an 85 and you studied. You know, you're not going to say to yourself, oh man, I should have cheated too. I would have gotten 100. You're like, hey, I got an 85 without cheating. And if I apply myself a little bit more, I'm sure I could get that 100 and not have to resort to cheating. You know, so again, it's your moral compass. You know, some people morally just, they're more inclined to do things the right way, and some people just don't care. You know, I want to get this. I don't care how I get it as long as I get what I want. But for me, it was never that. It was never that way. You know, my moral compass always was on, you know, high alert, and it was like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it the right way. And again, I couldn't imagine taking the drugs that build one's body, and then as soon as you get off the drugs, you lose everything you had. Everything it gave you, it's like it's going to take it back. You know, so for me, you know, I still got I still got biceps at 60 years old, and I'm still strong. I'm healthy. I'm not on any kind of medication, and to me, that's priceless. That's priceless.
But Jean, I've just booked in for this session with you. I just want to put some muscle on. I want 30 more pounds. I want this date with this girl. I keep seeing her and she's hanging out with all these hot, fit guys. I just want to put on 20, 30 pounds and I want it quick. I don't care about the way of going about it. Um, like, what would you say to that guy? Because it's like there's a lot of young, as you mentioned, naive, uneducated, just, you know, very young people out there, and they see on social media, as you know, that it's like it's all about social media, quick fix, least amount of effort for the maximum amount of results. I want the end goal right now. Whereas the truth of it is, it's like you're an overnight, you're a success in a short period of time, but you worked your ass off for it. And even in business, it's like this 10-year overnight success. People think they came out of nowhere, but no, they've been working
Right.
10, 20 years on their craft and their skill set. And so, how do you help someone to come down to reality and educate them on the truth about setting your moral compass in the right direction? Because you've got two, right? You've got three boys
Three
and
sons, yeah.
three sons. Yeah.
Yeah. 33, 31, and 24.
Yeah.
So for me, you know, the fallacy is that people think that they need to put on 20, 30 pounds of muscle for their bodies to change. I actually put on 10 pounds of lean muscle over 20 something years of competition. And when people look at my physique, they're like, and they see how I looked when I first started, and then they see how I look, you know, several years later. And I tell them this is only 10 pounds. They're like, 10 pounds? You look like like you got at least 20, 30 pounds more muscle. And I said, no. I said, it's actually 10. But again, it was 10 pounds of muscle with 3.5% body fat, which is the average male is 12 to 15% body fat. So if you ever see somebody with body fat that's 5% or low or less, that person is going to be very, very muscular. You know, so what they need to understand is that if you start training and you build your body up the right way, because one of the things about bodybuilding, it's an illusion. It's not like a magic act where it's fake or anything like that. I don't mean it from that perspective, but if you work on building very, very broad shoulders, and then you build your chest proportionately so that the chest is well developed from the bottom layer of the chest to the top, you know, around the clavicle, near the collarbone, then the chest is going to be very proportionate. Now, broad shoulders, well-developed chest, proportionate, and then now we throw in a very lean, muscular waistline, like that six-pack that everybody wants to, you know, dream about, you know, to be able to lift their shirt up and they have a six-pack. So when your body is developed like that, and let's say a person has like a 29, 30-inch muscular waist, just those proportions make you look bigger. Because here it is, you have very broad shoulders and you have a very small, narrow waist. And yet you have a very well-developed chest. And then as soon as you look below the chest, you have like that six-pack. So if your body looks like that, even if you only carry 5 pounds more muscle, you're going to look like it's 10 or 20. But if you don't understand the sport and understand that how you build yourself up is what makes your body look, bigger than life. Where someone will look at you and swear you're 20, 30 pounds heavier just because of the way you put your physique together. Just like legs don't have to be, humongous, but if the leg is very well developed, very proportionally developed, and you have very muscular legs, very good separations on your quads and your hamstrings and nice calves, all of these things just change the whole appearance of the body without there being a significant weight increase. You just have to learn the craft on how to achieve this. But once you do, you could be holding 10 pounds of muscle and people are thinking it's 30 or 40 because of the way you put the muscle on. And then the proportions of your body, having those broad shoulders, having that well-developed chest, having those six-pack abs. All of these things, it makes the body look very different once you acquire them. So just got to be patient. And at the end of the day, read a few articles on bodybuilders that took steroids and see how their lives ended up. See how many of them are alive and well today because of the drug use. So if you're looking to take that shortcut and you're going to know you're going to lose about 10, 20, 30 years of your life because of that sacrifice, ask yourself, is it really worth it? For a title, for a trophy or a magazine, is it worth it? And if you have that blatant no, then you're good. But that's it. Just ask yourself that. Is this drug worth my life? And once you think about it from that perspective, you're not going to have any part of it.
I just wanted to leave a dramatic pause just to let that land for everyone. What's going on, you purpose-driven human you? Thank you so much for checking out this interview. Zach Dean here. If you had any aha moments or questions, please put it into the comments. And while I have you here, I'd love to ask you a quick but powerful question. Do you ever dream about turning your passions and purpose into a business that helps people and makes a profit, but you don't have the energy or skill set or community or training to do so? Then listen up. I've actually created this. This has taken me 10 years of working with over 1,000 people in the health and wellness industry. I've created what's called the 28A Club. These are 28 actions of specific biohacks that give you the optimal energy, focus, and results in all areas based on quantum science and quantum biology. As you know, the frequencies in nature, when we align to them, allow us to become our fullest version. They allow us to become a high performer. When we disconnect from nature, we become a low performer, and it doesn't help to activate our purpose in life. And so if you'd like to download this is a free copy. Go to www.28a.club/join and you can download it, join the club of us high performers. And I look forward to seeing you in there, because that
Right.
some facts. That's like, yes, like people need to hear that. Guys, girls need to hear that, because I didn't know that it takes off 10, 20, 30 years. I think my perception was like it shrinks your dick, or it shrinks your balls, or like, it might cause a heart attack, or like my perception was like, okay, well, maybe if I get that big and then I'm not as consistent. Like some of my friends who have taken steroids, they're great for like 3-4 months, and then they're not consistent, and then they put on like just excess fat and stretch marks, or all this stuff. And I'm like, naturally long term, our testosterone can be generated and sustain into, you see these people living up to 120. I'm not saying we're going to have massive amounts of muscle, but at least life and quality of life is possible. I'd rather have the long game rather than the short game. And I think that's a great testament and a great set of rules that you were sharing there, because to drop that body fat and just to hone in on a little bit of extra muscle will make you look potentially better than having the steroids and having whatever impact that has on your skin and your liver and your organs and all the pressure or maybe toxins. I've seen the reverse side effects of steroids too. there's so many things I want to pick your brain in, and anyone out there listening and wants to connect with Jean, connect with him, and I might have to get some coaching from you as well, because I'd like to cut down that midsection. I've got quite a broad chest, but cutting down that fat. What's the best, I guess, strategy on cutting down fat? Because I don't want to eat less. I love my food. I
Right.
have done longer fasts before, but if someone could just drop down, maybe say 4 or 5% body fat, I think that would be the first strategy. If someone wants to look better and they're considering steroids, and yeah, it's like, sure, it's a shortcut and blah, blah, blah. You can get to your end goal quicker, but maybe just try a couple of things before that. Cut some fat, get a good
Yeah,
coach, maybe just do a bit of research before
absolutely.
jumping into steroids, because of its, it could be a path a slippery
No,
slope.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Too often, most people don't even give their bodies an opportunity to see what they can achieve
Just give it a
naturally, and they
go.
just jump
Yeah.
on the bandwagon thinking that they got to
So
start taking the drugs because I want to be huge. Learn how to train first. Learn how to eat first. Build that foundation, because when you have no foundation, all it's going to do is just make you that much more dependent on the drug. Because aside from the drug helping you, you don't even know how to do anything to help yourself besides expecting everything from the drug. So that's really not the right way to do it. You want to build a foundation in terms of your fitness and your strength, and building, I mean, as I said earlier, training, health is multiple categories. It's strength. When I say strength, I don't mean strong like the Hulk or Hercules or anything like that. I mean, if you weigh 200 pounds, don't walk around the strength of a person that weighs 150. Whatever you weigh, have the strength ratio that matches up with it. If you don't, then either decrease your weight in terms of your body weight, and then at the same time, once you make that adjustment and you follow a good diet, you're going to start seeing those changes. The key thing with carbohydrates is to learn how to not have them throughout the day. Complex carbs, simple carbohydrates, at the end of the day, it's all fuel for the body. It's like having a car, you put gas in it, and then you don't go anywhere. And then tomorrow you want to add more gas to it. It makes no sense. It's still full from the night before. So when people have like these massive meals late at night with a ton of carbs, and then the next morning they have breakfast, they have eggs and there's bread and there's more carbs coming in, you haven't burnt the carbs from the night before. And now you're just piling more on. Of course you're going to get fat. Of course you're going to get fat. But if you tell yourself, you know what? I'm not having any carbs until dinner time. So now, depending on how active you are, your body's constantly utilizing energy. And as it does that, you get leaner, and while you're doing your strength training, you're going to build muscle while burning body fat. And that's optimally what you want to do. But the key thing is to just be consistent. You have to do your cardio. You can't overindulge in your carbohydrate intake. You have to be disciplined about it. And once you're disciplined and you see that first 8-10 pounds comes off that first month, and your body starts changing, and people that you didn't even tell that you were on a diet are looking at you and saying, wow, have you been working out? Did you go on a diet? You look amazing. It's like, I can't remember the last time I seen you looking this good. There you go.
you look at yeah, that's to echo that point. It's like you look back, I don't know, 30, probably 20, 30, 40 years, and you look at the people, they were just skinnier. The men, the women, they were just skinnier. Today we're just bigger and bulkier and more inflamed and just expanded. Like, you look at just, even these models, they're not even that good looking, but it's just they have less body fat, and it creates more, I guess, cut on their face and their body. So fat's a big one. Are there any keys to dropping that fat past that 10% mark? Because I know that's usually a bit of a tricky one. But then to get down to 3 to 4%, that's my competing, right? and it's not really good to stay there long
Yeah,
term.
I don't even recommend anyone trying to get that lean
Right.
unless you're going on stage, you know what I mean? I mean, if a male gets under 10% body fat, I would say somewhere between 7 to 8, your body fat's going to be pretty low, and it's not going to be, you're not going to feel like you're killing yourself to try to maintain that. But once you start going under 5%, that's a lot of work. You know what I mean? That's very stressful on the body. So I don't think you can have a good body without going to that extreme. For me, if I didn't compete, I would have never went down to 3.5% body fat. It wouldn't have been necessary. I would have looked at myself and say, hey, food is not my enemy. Granted, I try to eat right and overall follow a healthy diet, but at the same time, you know, so much sacrifice have to be made when you're looking to get that lean. And you have to do cardio sometimes twice a day, 6 days a week. It's a lot of work. And if you're not going on stage and you're not being paid to model, why put yourself through all of that? When it's 7, 8% body fat, you could look amazing.
It's a really good point. I think I got to up my cardio. um, so yeah, I want to jump into a couple of key points here. Firstly, is the connection there, Jean? Can you hear me? Let me cut
Yes,
out.
I can hear you.
Perfect. You mentioned a couple of key aspects here or pillars to your success being the moral compass, discipline, and your faith. We spoke about faith before jumping on here. How has your faith supported you throughout your journey, and has that helped you with this point of view? Because I feel like in the world we live in today, with social media, with the addictions of whether it's sugar or social media or porn or these escapist kind of opportunities we have today, there's a battle, I guess, for our soul, so to speak, of distracting us from our purpose, from God. You look at the Emmys, you look at these music videos in Hollywood, and there's like they're full of satanic symbolism and these just blatant, in our face, evil things. Now, in Australia, we don't have it as much. We're quite sheltered, but we do see it from afar. And my question to you is, how as an American man, how have you navigated, as well as having your faith being an important part of your journey? How have you navigated that battle of the ego, the quick fixes? I guess it's also leaning on that point as well. But yeah, how important has faith been on your journey?
Well, that's another great question, Zach. And I've lived that on both sides of the coin. Basically, what that means is I've lived a life where when I kind of strayed, from my faith, I went through a lot of challenges and a lot of hardship, and life got a lot harder, much more challenging. And when I found myself being more faith driven and be in a place of gratitude and putting God in a much higher place in my life, things were easier, more blessings followed my life. And I had an older brother who's 5 years older, who was not the most spiritual person, of great faith. And eventually his drug addiction ended up taking his life at the age of 29 years old. Meanwhile, he was a father of 3. And, this is part of the things that when we make bad choices, it hurts us. I mean, I could have never imagined in my wildest dreams that I was going to lose my brother, and just before my 25th birthday. And here it is. He'd never get to know my wife or my kids and see my path, see what the things that I was able to achieve, him being that presence to see it all start from its beginning, and got to miss out on all of that. So, to me, there's examples all around us that remind us, what kind of life do we want to live? Do we want a life that's just full of pain and full of hardship and a lot of suffering, or would we prefer to have a life where we have a higher moral compass, we're much more grounded, and we could just feel like our life is a lot more enriched and it's more blessed. The things that we pray for, God hears our prayers. Like I was blessed with a absolutely dynamic wife of 34 years of marriage, and I had lost 3 sons through abortions and different past relationships before I was married and met my wife, and now to have been given back what I had lost and have 3 amazing sons, has been incredible. So a lot of times when you cling to your faith, you have no idea the blessing that you're going to receive and the size of that blessing and how life-changing it could be. So, to me, it's a no-brainer. I know I need it, and I rely on it.
That's so great to hear, because I think a lot of the time we get, well, I speak from my experience. I get so distracted at times with the same thing. We're talking about short-term fixes, whether it's like fun, um, partying, social media. There's all the lures of society, and the impact that has on some people is death. So it's an absolute tragedy. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry to hear that. And I think it's hard to see the reason, or hard to see the purpose of life in the moment. But when we look back on it, I'm sure that's helped to sculpt who you are today, and appreciate, and to be a better father, and to be a better, man in society. So, um, how have how has challenge or failure um, help shape you? And then how do you install this? How do you help to pass this on to your family and your kids? Because I'm sure there's a whole nother conversation around parenting, but how do
Yeah.
you install these fundamental principles around failure and long-term results and health and
One
wellness?
one of the things
Yeah.
I always say that is we have to lead by example. So our kids are going to mimic what they see us do, and if they see dad drinking alcohol and beer every day, and sitting down and smoking cigarettes or doing drugs, then after a while they're going to gravitate to that, because every day that's the example that they're looking at. But if they see dad comes home from work, and you know dad's eating healthy meals, and dad's got to go to the gym and work out, and dad's into sports and bike riding and things like that, then that becomes your influence. So for me, it's very important to just understand the power of influence. And if you're going to not be the example, then the outcome that's coming, a lot of it falls on you.
Be the change, lead by example. And this is exactly why I started this interview series, is because I watched that documentary, What is a Woman, by Matt Walsh. And it was this story of how boys and girls these days are getting sex changes and having this altering
Oh,
surgery with
crazy.
their body and their mind and their hormones. It changes it's like they're taking steroids and they're doing, like as a kid. And then the parents can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. The parents are going to jail for speaking up and saying, hey, I can't, this is not right. You're a boy, you're a girl, not the opposite. Um, and so I'm glad you brought that up around example, because yeah, I don't have any kids yet, but I am, and we all are an example to everyone around us at all times. And so we get to
Absolutely.
choose what we're doing, how we speak, how we think, our results, the people we talk to, how we just show up, and our presence as a man specifically is just being that rock and being the one to lean into the challenges. Not that women don't, but to really lean in and lean in together. Because I think a lot of men don't communicate, don't talk. Here in Australia, there's a lot of suicide, massive amounts
Right.
between 25 to 35 or 20 to 35. It's a pandemic. So yeah, that's a really, really good point.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah,
So
that's
Gene,
that's tough.
how can everyone get in touch with you? Like, what's the best way people can connect? Get onto your Facebook group. I think you've got some programs starting soon. Yeah, how can people connect?
Well, on social media, Facebook, I have a group fitness page called Mr. Natural, helping men and women over 50 get fit. On Instagram, my link is Mr. Natural USA Bodybuilding. That's also a very popular site where I post very regularly, and I have a lot of inspirational and instructional videos. And I also have a website, naturally fit .now.site. So you can actually download my ebook on the website, which is The Art of the Rep. So the key thing is for me, I'm doing my best to utilize this platform to change lives, to share my gift, and to make a difference in the lives of many. It's too often than not, people struggle with understanding how to take care of themselves, and they need guidance. They need someone who's done it, someone who's been doing it a long time, that can show that even as you get older into your 50s and 60s, you can still live a very healthy lifestyle and still not be part of the current statistics. So, as I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in leading by example.
Absolutely. And you lead with results. I can see it. We haven't met in person, but how I've spoken to you over the last couple of weeks, I can see that you're a man on purpose. And it's been so great to pick your brains and your experience and share your knowledge and wisdom with the world. Please connect with Jean, everybody. We've covered everything from how to build muscle without steroids. We spoke about the difference between long-term and short-term. We spoke about the mindset and around the intention behind your training. We spoke about discipline, spoke about faith, we spoke about being an example, and a whole bunch of other stuff. What are your final comments? Any other pearls of wisdom or anything we left out before we finish this off?
Well, the key thing that I'd like to say is that no one should ever feel like, their body is beyond repair. It doesn't matter how old you are. I have a husband and wife in their mid-70s that started training me 2 months ago, and they're loving it and they're making great progress. I have another lady that started today, who's 75 years old, who had suffered with a lot of health issues, and she's getting better. I have a client who's suffered from a stroke 2 years ago, who's been working with me for 2 years, and we went from his bed to him literally being able to walk out of his house and walk into my gym and work out. So no matter how old you are or what you suffered, you can get better. You can get better. Believe that. Be disciplined about it and work at it as often and as frequently as you can. And if this is something too hard for you to figure out, then I'm your guy. Contact Mr. Natural. I'm not hard to find. You know what I mean? I will definitely get you in the best shape of your life, and you won't regret it. Not only you'll be in the best shape of your life, you'll look and feel 10 years younger, but your life will change drastically. Because I tell people all the time, this journey is a way of life. It's not something that you do for a vacation, for a birthday, or anything of that sort. It's something that becomes a part of you. It's a living and breathing thing that comes to life, where you develop this intimate relationship with yourself. And I say love and hate cannot live in the same residence. When you love yourself, you will care for yourself differently. You cannot be depressed while caring and loving for yourself and doing the right thing by yourself. Anytime a person is fighting depression, that means you're not doing the things to show yourself love, so you feel that you're unworthy of love. So you're going down a dark path. All you need to do is turn it around and start telling yourself, I love me, and therefore I will take care of me for the rest of my life. And that's how I honor the gift of my mind and my body, and this greatest gift that God gave me I will care for it to the best of my ability.
All about it. All about it. Thank you so much for your energy, your time, and I look forward to connecting really soon. Everyone connect with Jean online, and we'll see you next time, guys. See ya.
Thank you, Zach. Pleasure.